Hi, folks. Here again is David Simpson with the Remedy Project Criminal Justice Realm. Here again to enlighten you on program statements. What? Again? Yes, program statements are extremely important to folks who are incarcerated and or to anything to do with the prison system, right? So these program statements are extremely important. You have to know how to use them, how to maneuver, go about looking up any information you need using these program statements. They are laws or rules, regulations that are placed for both the incarcerated and those who are um, running the system to use, right? So it's very, very, very important. And we need to understand them, need to know how to maneuver them, and so on and so forth. So today, this lesson, the program statement we are covering after the administrative remedy program statement is equally important. Why is this one so important? Is because the administrative remedy process is woven into this particular program statement, this process, um, or this program. And not only that, it is one of the most sought after issues by folks who are incarcerated that you're going to run into. And so, if you don't know the administrative remedy process, you can't help folks with this situation. And if you don't know about this situation and just know the administrative remedy process, you can't help them with this issue either. And so, what is this issue that I'm talking about? What are you talking about here, David? Okay, we are talking about here the well, of course, you could see they called it the Inmate Discipline Program. I would call it the Incarcerated Persons Discipline Program. Okay, I would do that. Again, the idea here is to move away from the words that they use that are demeaning, dehumanizing, that they use in a form of a derogatory manner against us, those of us who were incarcerated, to move away from that, right? Um, 'Cause it makes humanizing folks in the system, it makes it easier to help them. It makes it easier not allow abuse, right? So when folks dehumanize you or make you into something other than a human being that doesn't deserve respect or good treatment, it is an excuse, an easy excuse now for them to act and to treat you horribly, right? And so, because most of us in the prison system are slaves by the American Constitution and by the way that the system treats us, it puts us in there and basically folks feed themselves and their careers and businesses and so on off of this system. You work for pennies, and it's there to where it's a warehouse for people, and so we are all commodity items in this warehouse that is monetized, and and they collect funds off of us from the taxpayer, and that is what's more important than anything else. That's more important than the fact that we are human beings, right? And so that's why using the number, our registered number that they provide us, is more important than our names as and or who we are as human beings, right? So hopefully that's my last time reiterating that as why you want to move away from terms like inmate and so on when it comes to going through the process and understanding this process, right? So when I read and when I'm learning, you'll see me, I'll replace it in my head. And so I'm replacing that derogatory behavior, all right? Okay, so this program statement, again, as we covered, program statement or PS 5270.09, that's how you're going to list it, right? Or let's say quoting it, PS 5270.09, right? or it's the inmate discipline program. All right. Um, what is this? Right, and why is this important? Well, this program here is like a mini court system within the prison system, right? So it's a court, it's almost like a court process. It's the same as what you have out in society, where if you run a red light, an officer can pull you over and give you a ticket, by which you can then either plead guilty and just pay, or you could challenge it by going to court and saying, oh, well, I didn't actually run the red light, or this is what actually happened, or whatever, right? And or the same as if they charged you with a crime, all right, and out there in society, they you get charged with a crime, they take you to arraignment, the officers investigate the crime, they provide the charges, you get indicted, and then you have to defend yourself in the court system, right? This is like a smaller system within the prison system, a smaller court system within the prison system, with it has the same elements a little bit, but it's slightly different. And so, what are you talking about, David? What do you mean it's slightly different? What is this? Why are you rambling about this stuff? Well, I promise you, it's not the same as the court system, right? And here is why. Here is why. Okay, so you have an officer um, that would write, let's say, a ticket, in our case, as you will see, and it's called an incident report. And then there is someone who investigates, right? Whereas out in the world, they would do the investigation first. Outside of prison, they'll do the investigation first and then provide your indictment, which is like your ticket. Well, that's if it's a criminal case. If it's on the streets, traffic violations, they'll just write you the ticket, which is that one, I guess, is more similar to uh, the prison system, right? And so now there's an investigation, but there's no investigation after that. You get a ticket in the street, right, out in the community, and there's an investigation before you are indicted. In prison, you are given a incident report or a ticket for you, right? Because I'm using those two together so that you understand in the community what I'm talking about easily. So you get this ticket, and then there is an investigation, right? So a staff member believes that an incarcerated person committed a bad act or a violation, and they just go ahead and they write this incident report, and then the ticket, and then there's an investigation. Then it goes to a committee, in front of a committee, who operates and acts like a judge and prosecutor at the same time, for minor or medium range issues. And if it's a high issue, they are just like a step in the process, to which you then go in front of the person who is in the system that is really looked at as a judge and your prosecutor at the same time, who is called a DHO, disciplinary hearing officer. So we're going to get into all of that in extent, right? And the incarcerated individual does not have a right to an attorney. They have to defend themselves. For some idiotic reason, these folks suggested that the prison officers, who usually stick together and have the mindset of incarcerated person against staff, believe that a staff member could be a good representative or someone to help guide that person, to help that person defend themselves if necessary. That it doesn't work well. It just doesn't happen. It's a waste of time. No one believes in it or trusts in it because staff work together to the benefit of staff and not to those who are incarcerated. I've tried to get one of the most important or the best officers that walked the compound one time to come and stand up for me, and that worked severely against me. Right? So yeah, as it does for most folks who are incarcerated. Uh, right. So this system is slightly different, okay? But definitely a system of court. It's like a mini court process within there. All right. So let's start walking you through this, right? So again, my goals and my intentions here is to walk you through the system so that you get an idea of what it is and how it operates so that you can therefore assist folks with it. I'm not going to read everything in here again. I want you to read it. If you're going to be doing remedies on behalf of folks, you should be reading this. This is one. Remedies help with this process is going to come your way a lot when folks understand, oh, you guys do this. uh the incarcerated folks realize, oh, you guys help with incident reports, you could help me with that. Or they're gonna flood you with it when they get it. When they get these incident reports, they're gonna flood us or you, because they know you can help with that. And so knowing how to navigate this, knowing and understanding this process is key. Just telling you that the process exists and some of the guidelines, however, does not get you to use it properly. You need to be taught and shown how it's done. And that's why I am here and why this program, these training videos are being recorded. All right. Okay, so purpose and scope, the first part of this program statement. Again, section 541.1, purpose. All right. I'm going to read this because, there's a lot of things that I got to point out in this one. All right, it says this one here, the subpart describes the Federal Bureau of Prisons, Bureau of Incarcerated Person Discipline Program, right? Or Inmate Discipline Program. Right? You know what I'm doing. This program helps ensure the safety, security, and orderly operation of correctional facilities and the protection of the public by allowing the Bureau staff to impose sanctions on incarcerated persons who commit prohibited acts. All right, so this system was designed, this mini court system was designed for the purpose of, you know, them being able to penalize, sanction and penalize folks, right? For committing bad acts or things, or for doing things that they should not be doing. Right? It says here that sanctions will not be imposed in a capricious and retaliatory manner. Well, clearly it says that there. That's one of the first things on this program statement. But one of the things that you're going to learn when studying and or reviewing things with me is that the number one problem with this entire Bureau of Prisons and the policies and even with the courts a lot of times is that the policy is there, the policy is clear, and staff will do their own thing, do differently, just for the purpose of securing a conviction, or sanction, or whatever it is against an incarcerated person, even if it's not in line with the policy. And then they will defend themselves, each other, the staff, up the chain of command of the process, to protect themselves and the operation, right? And one of the things that they do to do that is they do a lot of the times, very huge amount of the times, sanction and or impose capricious and retaliatory incident reports against folks, or use this system in that manner. They use it in a capricious and retaliatory manner all the time. They do it. It's almost like it's in their DNA. at this point, right? It's their mindset. It's a part of the way they operate mentally, and folks suffer a lot. Now, am I saying that a lot of incarcerated folks didn't do what they said they did or wasn't supposed to do and don't deserve incident reports and or sanctions? Absolutely not. I would tell you that a lot of folks in prison break the rules. They break the rules. Um, they don't do what they're supposed to do. And a lot of times, incident reports and or sanctions are justly due, right? And or required. But what my uh, analysis has been of the situation is that a lot of the times, the majority of the times, just like it happens out in the real world, folks commit prohibited acts, or a prohibited act was committed. They know it has to be one out of two people or one out of three people, or they strongly believe that this individual is responsible, or that particular individual is responsible, but they don't have the sufficient evidence to commit or to find that person guilty. So what do? Just like out in the streets and the courts and the police, um, prison staff enhance or make up or add on stuff, um, and abuse this process to punish folks, that that they normally can't because they don't have the sufficient evidence or so on. And thereby what happens is you could then turn around and challenge it. A lot of the times that's what I've done. I've turned around and challenged on behalf of these individuals. I've done remedies on behalf of individuals that I knew were guilty, that I knew did what they did. But can I tell them, hey man, I know you're guilty, so I'm not going to help you do a remedy? No, I'm not going to tell them that. They have a right to file an administrative remedy. They have a right to challenge the process and say that, whatever they want to say, right? That's a right that was provided to them. It's a right that they still have. And just like citizens out in the street, you have a right to, even if you are found, even if you're guilty, you have a right to plead not guilty and challenge and make the system prove that you're guilty, right? And it's the same thing. Um, but does that give the professionals, the ones who run the system, the ones who are responsible for the system, the right to turn around and say, okay, well, we'll violate since we believe you're guilty, and even we might have sufficient evidence to prove you're guilty, but you're acting like you're not and you want to challenge us. Does that give them the right to go above and beyond and violate their own policies now just to punish you worse, just to make things harsher for you, because you did that? I would say if it's legal, yes. But a lot of times they violate the rules to do that. So, for instance, a person in the prison system would have a minor charge, and staff, in order to teach a lesson, right, or to, because they believe that folks who are incarcerated should be punished severely. A lot of the times, a lot of them have that mentality, where you step out of bounds, I'm gonna crush you, right? That's the mentality they have. So what is usually a minor situation would end up, they would end up with a severe sanction. And a lot of staff knows that the charge was overboard or what's being done to the person is overboard, but they would go in line with the system, with the process of protecting one another and standing by one another, and punish that person severely or unconstitutionally, just because, and that's what they do, right? So yeah, I want you to know straight up, right? Even though it says here sanctions will not be imposed in a capricious and retaliatory manner, uh, I would say almost 50% of the time they are. Yeah, this is why I'll go 50-50 because I know folks in prison do things that they're not supposed to do all the time. Um, and the truth is, a lot of them who do, when they get incident reports, a lot of them take it. A lot of them take the hit. But there's a few that would say, oh, no, I don't want that. Oh, they lose. We'll cover it good time. And they don't want that. So they'll challenge the system, right? Because the sanctions are too high. All right. The Bureau's inmate discipline program is authorized by this code here, this United States code. All right. Um, okay. Application 541.2 application, right? This program applies to sentenced and unsentenced incarcerated persons in the Bureau's custody, right? So it doesn't matter. Uh, Once you are incarcerated within the Federal Bureau of Prisons, it, it doesn't matter whether you are not convicted yet or you are convicted. They can sanction you, right? So citizens who are not slaves yet, because they were not convicted and now carry that felony on their name, right? That slave, label, they don't have that yet. You could still, once you're incarcerated, this can still be used against you, right? So it's for those who are, once you're in the system, whether you are convicted or not, whether you're an actual slave yet or not, this still applies to you. All right. Okay. Do I want to address anything else here? It also applies to sentence and sentence designated to any prison, institution, or facility which persons are held in custody by direction of or under agreement with the Bureau of Prisons. All right, so yeah, so it doesn't matter the facility. So if you're on home confinement, really and truly, the halfway house that's responsible for you while you're on home confinement could give you an incident report, and this process is supposed to enact. All right, this policy comes into play. If you are at the halfway house, the same thing. If you're in a camp institution, the same thing. If you're in a low, medium, or high, the same thing. If you're in a private facility, like a lot of immigration folks are, federal private facilities, the same thing. They all have this process, or supposed to have this process, once the Federal Bureau of Prisons is the ones who are responsible for you to provide you with a due process, right? With this mini court process by which they must, write you a sanction and then find you guilty of whatever it is they're accusing you of. This policy applies to all persons in custody, right? So we're not going to go over that again. We just read that. Okay, I'm going to skip through a lot of this stuff here. It's good for you to take a look, but I'm going to point out the parts of this program statement that are important that you should read 2 to 3 times if you're going to do remedies on behalf of folks, especially if you're going to help them with this process. I'm going to point those areas out. Okay, chapter 1 of this program statement, 541.3, prohibited acts and available sanctions. This section here is going to give you a fair understanding of what prohibited acts are, and the sanctions. Is this something that you should be stressing on at this point in learning the system? No. What you should pay more attention to first is how to defend against this, because addressing the prohibited acts and stuff comes at the end of the process. So what am I talking about? So if an incarcerated person gets an incident report and it's a moderate or low type prohibited act that was violated, the sanctions that that person gets are not supposed to be that heavy or that ridiculous that that causes that individual that much pain. Um, and so therefore most of the time they're going to want you to challenge the fact that they got the incident report in the first place, right? That they were accused of the prohibited act the majority of the time. And so you're going to be focusing 90% of the time on beating that beating that incident report, right? You're going to, they want you to beat that. They don't, they want you to win, and then the sanctions go away completely, right? They don't want you to focus on reducing the sanctions, um, which is something you could do, but you know, yeah, right. And sometimes the wrong sanctions are applied, but again, that's a part of beating it, right? So th- this is important to know, but it's not the first steps to know. They provided it first. I think it's not the first set of steps to know. I think this really comes after the fact, right? Prohibited acts. The list of prohibited acts are divided into four separate categories based on severity. Greatest is high, moderate, and low, right? We describe the prohibited acts in table 1. Prohibited acts are available sanctions, right? So there's a table, and that's later on in this program statement that you're going to run into. I'm going to go look at that just a little bit with you. I want you to look at it by yourself, um, right, which covers all of this, right? Aiding and attempting and abetting, making plans to commit and prohibited acts are treated the same as committing the act itself, right? So here in it's clear in the prison system that if you attempted to do something, you might as well have did it. If you are aiding someone in doing something, you might as well have did it. Um, right? Um, and so on and so forth, right? Making plans to do it, they're saying, well, you might as well have done it, right? These are important stuff to understand, because folks who are incarcerated don't. They believe they still have the rights as folks who are out in the prison, out of the prison system, outside in the community, and they don't. There's a, let's put it this way: this is the court process or the court system for the slaves. It's not for the regular folk, right? You don't have the same rights. Slaves and regular folks, regular citizens, don't have the same rights. People need to get that through their head. Need to understand that, right? I'll show you some more outrageous stuff on that later on. Available sanctions. The list of available sanctions is in table 1 also. So I'll get to that, right? We'll get to that. Greatest severity level offenses, and you have the disciplinary hearing officer, DHO, which I explained is like the judge of the system. They're like the judges in the system, the disciplinary hearing officers, or judge and prosecutor. My bad. They are the prosecutors and judge of the system, and yeah, they do the same job at the same time. What? When you say what? How is that possible? Yes, it's done. I tell you, it's done all the time. That's what they do. I'm not going to get into this because I'm talking about DHO too fast, right? And the other thing that I have to get into, if I start here, I have to get into the UDC, which is Unit Disciplinary Committee, and all of that. And it's like, no, right? So, yes, you could read this stuff, but I think the list at table 1 and stuff in the background is more important to you, but reading this stuff here at least once and understanding what it is and where it is, and what it's about is important, okay? But it's not the most important thing to you. So I'm going to scroll through that, and I'm going to stop here at this section for a second. Section 541.4, loss of good conduct sentence credit as a mandatory sanction. I'm not going to talk about it as a mandatory sanction. I'm just going to tell you what that is about. When folks are incarcerated, they convicted and sentenced, they automatically start owning good conduct time days added on to their sentence. And these good conduct time days can be taken away as a sanction to severe incident reports. Some minor ones, DHOs have sanctioned folks. If you have a repeated amount of minor sanctions or 300 series incident reports, they can and will take good conduct time for you from you. 7 days, I think, is the appropriate level. You would see that in here somewhere. Um, and what that does is, because that person loses that good conduct time, they're now doing 7 days extra in prison that they would not have done had they not been accused or found guilty of committing this bad act, and now sanctioned for it, right? The other thing I'm going to mention with the good conduct time is that if a incarcerated person does not have a GED and is in the prison system, and they're not working on towards getting that GED, that diploma, uh, they automatically can be sanctioned for using this process, and or in general they could lose good conduct time that way also. And you'll have, so yeah, this is stuff, right? You have great severity levels. um, Offenses, you will lose at least 41 days. High severity level offenses, you will lose at least 27 days, and so on and so forth, right? I'm not going to pay attention to this stuff again. This is usually on the back end. A lot of times folks are not going trying to say uh, you know, reduce my time, reduce my sentence. They're usually trying to say, I didn't do this, and so I shouldn't have lost this time anyway, right? Like I just mentioned here, for the low offenses, you got 7 days, right? um, Again, I know that because I've read this before, but I don't memorize these program statements and stuff. I don't, right? I just know that when something comes up, I need to go and take a look in certain places, and I know where to go find what I'm looking for. All right. So I'll scroll through all of this. It's not, you know, good conduct time. I don't want to be focusing heavily on that at this moment. I think that stuff should come after the fact. All of this too, in a kind of way. Anybody looking at this stuff, it's already complicated. It, and you get dissuaded. What? Discipline program, and they hit you with all of this stuff first. And then after you go through this, you don't want to even see no more, right? I've looked at how long this video. I've already just, giving you, but I'm giving you important stuff, but still, it's already taking too long as far as I'm concerned, right? But yeah, so section 541.5, the discipline process. This is where we need to focus. This is where we really need to start, right? I think this is what should have been provided first. Right? And sanctions and stuff come after. Why? Because you get the sanctions after the fact, right? You have to go through this process first before you get the sanctions, right? Yeah, but that's just me. Could be wrong, who knows? All right, so let's get into it. Let's get rocking, because this is a lot. It's a lot of stuff. It's important. Okay, so incident report. All right, discipline process starts with an incident report. What is an incident report? An incident report is like a ticket. It's like getting a ticket in the community or being indicted for a criminal offense. In the prison system, the official and proper term is an incident report. However, in the prison system, we call it a shot. Right? So you say, what do you say? A shot? Yes, I said a shot. That's what we call it. Call it a shot. Well, the individual, I did this, and then the officer gave me a shot. All right? And we also say we got written up. all right, or the person got written up, all right? So shot or you got written up. Those are the terms that are used in the system. So an incarcerated person reaching out to you for help with this process is going to probably, this is not going to say, oh, I got an incident report. No, I promise you, you're going to see that very, 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 very little. Right? What you're going to see the most of the time is, hey, they wrote me a shot, I was written up for this, or they wrote me up for that. Right? That's how it's expressed. Right? And I don't like that, and I want you to help me challenge it. Right? So incident report. The discipline process starts when a staff witnesses or reasonably believes that you committed a prohibited act. Okay, so one of the things that I want you to do, even though we're talking about incarcerated people here, and you are not incarcerated, you are outside learning this process in order to help folks who are incarcerated, I would suggest you go along with this thing and you put yourself in that person's shoe. It says you, look at it as you. Right? Look at it for a second as if you were the slave that's being written up or given a shot, an incident report. And yeah, why I'm telling you to do that is because uh, if you could see yourself as the one being overly punished or wrongfully punished a lot of the times, you can be a better defender of those who are incarcerated because of that, right? That's why I got extremely good at it, because I got wrongful incident reports a lot, and I won the majority of mine. Some staff just wouldn't address. They just wouldn't change the outcome, and they left them that way on me, on my record. It is what it is. I know what it is. I'm not mad about that. I know I know what the system I was in, right? Um, and so, but when it came to me helping others, you know, I I had a more I had more passion and more intuition into how to help and what to look for because of the wrongs and the abusive ways that this process was used against me. And I got really good at it because they used it against others, and I challenged it and challenged it, and I learned it so well. Right? So any officer who believes that an incarcerated person did something that they wasn't supposed to do, they can go look at the list of prohibited acts. We'll get to that, and determine which one is appropriate, which one of those the incarcerated person violated, and write an incident report, right? They start or generate an incident report based on what that incarcerated person did, all right, and apply it. All right, it says, so any staff member, once you're working within the Federal Bureau of Prisons, you work in there, you could write an incident report. If you are a let's say a volunteer or someone who came into the prison system, let's say you are doing a program like a school program, one of the colleges is educating folks in the system, and they witness something, or something was done, let's say as an incarcerated person was rude to them or threatened them in some form or fashion. um, that individual can't write an incident report. That individual could report to staff what happened, and the staff would then generate the incident report or shot or write that individual up. All right? A staff member will issue you an incident report describing the incident and the prohibited acts you are charged with committing. All right? The officer sees what happens or becomes aware, and they write an incident report. It's going to give you some details on how to do that, and that incident report is then supposed to be turned over to the individual. But not just yet. There's a lot more that goes on, right? So the way this is written, it thinks that um, staff member will issue the incident report describing the incident, right? It thinks that you kind of like, you're gonna get this, whenever. Well, the next line here says you will ordinarily receive the incident report within 24 hours of staff becoming aware of the involvement in the incident, right? And it says ordinarily. Don't be fooled by that word ordinarily here. In the system, it is understood that unless there is a proper reason for delay, incident reports are to be delivered to the incarcerated person within 24 hours of the time of that staff found out they committed that prohibited act. When that is not done, staff are violating the incarcerated person, that slave's due process rights. Okay? This process, this disciplinary process, is a guide on how an incarcerated person should be sanctioned and or should be charged and sanctioned. And when they don't use this process, you are violating that individual's due process rights. Okay? Um, yeah. So 24 hours. They have to, oh, I just saw inmate Simpson remove food from the chow hall. That is a prohibited act. You saw that at 12 p.m. on Monday. The staff has 24 hours from 12 p.m. on Monday to 12 p.m. on Tuesday to deliver an incident report charging me with the correct and appropriate code for removing food from the chow hall, which is what I'm not supposed to do without permission. I'm not supposed to do it without permission. That's another thing. I can do it, but I have to have permission. Right? So understanding the rules and regulations. I understand them well. All right. Okay. So this second paragraph here is important. So I'll continue. When staff witnesses and reasonably believes that a violation of Bureau of Prisons regulations has been committed, staff must prepare that incident report. So the person who is noticing the stuff was done has to prepare the incident report, and then it's forwarded and or assigned to a lieutenant. A lieutenant that's on duty at that time. A lieutenant is a supervising correctional officer. So you have the regular correctional officers that are looked at as turnkeys and assigned to different areas of the prison. And then above them are lieutenants who are responsible. They are like the supervisors. There's the level up. And then after the lieutenants is the captain, right, of the facility. And so that is the order by which that goes, right? And so lieutenants are the ones who usually deliver incident reports, right? So it goes into here, it breaks down here how they fill out this incident report, right? The staff has to fill part one and all the different parts of the incident report. I'm covering the program statement now. In another video, I will cover the incident report, what that looks like, okay? I'm not going to do that here. It's going to be too much and too complicated for you, right? And just so that you know, in the prison system, incarcerated persons, there's no one walking them through this and there's no one showing them what an incident report is going to look like and what they should look out for in order to defend themselves. There's no one doing that. I'm the first to be doing this stuff here for you guys on the outside, and hopefully in the future we can get something to them on the inside, right? It's all about doing the work. Okay, description of incident report shall contain. All right, so I'm not going to go into all of that. All right, I'm going to stick to the basics at the moment on what's supposed to happen. Right. So what we just covered there was the staff, any staff member seeing a violation and producing that report. Right. That shot or writing the individual up, and that it needs to be turned over in 24 hours. And what happens next? Within that same 24 hours, when the staff produces that incident report, it's supposed to be turned over to the appropriate lieutenant, like we just saw, and that lieutenant is supposed to do an investigation, right? So again, the incidents are not, stuff is in the Federal Bureau of Prisons is not investigated before, right? For some reason, it's investigated after. So they get to write the report and then investigate. And so that investigating officer, who is ordinarily a lieutenant or usually a lieutenant, um, will do an investigation. What does this investigation look like? So, okay, so this officer, I would love to say that I could tell you what it's supposed to look like, right? Based on my studying of these laws and using them for folks over a period of time. A lieutenant, when he gets an incident report, Slave Simpson removed, food from the chow hall. So they wrote me up for unauthorized item, and they wrote me another shot. Let's say they wrote me another incident report or shot for stealing, right? That's a common thing. So those are two common incident reports you would see an individual get who removes food from the chow hall of the prison without authorization. One is called an unauthorized, possession of unauthorized items, and the other shot would be called stealing. All right? Those are two common terms. And so what is supposed to happen is the staff member wrote that up, and the lieutenant is supposed to, when he receives the incident report, it comes to him in the sentry. He looks at it and he says, "Okay, incarcerated person Simpson stole or had unauthorized items," and that individual is now supposed to look at the evidence that the officer is providing. If the officer is saying, "Well, I saw him do it and I took it off of him, I took the items away from him, um, and I kept them as evidence, or I took them off of him and I threw it in the trash, or I confiscated the items." It just says they could say I took it and I confiscated the items, right? The investigating officer should be looking into where those items are. Did they exist or not, right? And if not, they don't exist anymore. It's probably going to go based on the on the staff's word, right? The staff's word in the incident report is also good, right? And so now that investigating officer still has, as a part of his investigation, he is supposed to be coming and talking to me and finding out what happened. He's supposed to come and talk to me as a part of the investigation, right? He's supposed to come and say to me, "Hey, did you do this? Or, you want to talk about it? You want to tell me about what happened?" And so on and so forth. And I could defend myself by telling him my side of the story, or I could not. I could remain silent, which is not a good thing. That is not a good thing, right? Remaining silent in prison is not a good thing. That's good for the community. For prison, no, it's not good, right? And so he'd come and speak to you, and then what he's supposed to do, what the lieutenant is supposed to do then, is based on the information from the staff, the evidence collected, if it was collected properly and it exists, and my words and any defense that I might have. So maybe I had a defense. Maybe I said, "Well, I got evidence to prove otherwise. I was in the chow hall with Jim and John, and Jim and John was with me, and they are my witnesses that officer did not take any items from me." So maybe I'm defending myself completely here, right? And I say that to that lieutenant, right? So that's a defense, and I'm saying witnesses. There's that officer's, while he's doing the investigation, it's his responsibility to go to Jim and John and find out what happened, because he's supposed to be investigating. Also, if I said, "Well, there's a camera at the chow hall, you could go look at the camera and see if the officer actually took stuff off of me," because no, I could say that the officer is lying. The officer didn't take anything off of me, right? And the investigating officer is supposed to go do that. right? So those are two good defenses that an incarcerated person could bring up, right? If he was by himself and there's no camera, it's his word against the officer. 9 times out of 10, they are trained to do that. They are trained to go with staff because and I think that this is foolishness. They're trained to go with staff because in their mind, staff is more credible than the incarcerated person because staff works for the Federal Bureau of Prisons. It's supposed to be a government agency where we are all reputable and professional, and we can't do no wrong, and we don't do any wrong. That is hogwash, right? I don't understand why folks in the justice system have that mindset. They really have brainwashed themselves into believing that nonsense and brainwashed the majority of the community to believe in it. I would tell you that we are all human beings and we all, at some point in time, lie, cheat, and steal. We all abuse things and or situations for the best outcomes the majority of the time. There are very few of us who practice to our own demise and detriment telling the truth or being honest all the time, right? And they are good individuals, uh, like I try to be now, that I would say I would do no wrong, and I try to practice telling the truth all the time and this type of stuff, right? And um, let's just say something, they find my son doing something, and I know he could go away for life if they find that it's possible that he did that. There's a lot of evidence to show that he's doing that. And I'm telling you, as a person who lives by a code of not living lies and not practicing lies and not telling lies, I would be very, very in in the want or the need to violate my own code and practices at a point in time to protect my son, right? If folks who don't have the codes of morals that I have and the standards that I have, these strict standards that I live by, 9 times out of 10, going to do that way faster than I would. It's not going to take something that serious to to force them to lie. I'm suggesting that it takes something that serious to get me to lie, which I probably will to protect my son. You know, if I but if I hold true to my practice and standards and my beliefs, I understand that hey, if you know that your son actually did this thing and it's wrong, then he should suffer the consequences that come with doing that, right? Um, and I should be honest and and allow that process to go through. That's that's called being honest and being responsible and all these other things. But we are human beings and we don't do that all the time. We don't practice that all the time. That's unfortunate, but that's what we do. We don't practice that all the time. And so therefore that lieutenant uh, or that investigating officer who is supposed to should be investigating the situation, who is supposed to look at the evidence and see what's up. They don't always do the right thing. And even the incarcerated folks, we don't always have the right thing, right? And so I laid out the process of what that lieutenant is supposed to do. He's supposed to investigate. What is he supposed to determine? And I'm telling you that doesn't happen the majority of the time. It's actually done differently, and I'll explain. Um, the lieutenant, what usually happens in the prison system is the incident report is generated. The lieutenant gets the incident report. The lieutenant does not go because they're overburdened. There's too much work. Sometimes, if a prison has 2,000 incarcerated folks, I would say there's probably 100 incident reports generated a day, you know, and the lieutenant has to deal with that on top of all the other work and assignments he has. And so, what is he going to do? Is he going to go investigate, run back and forth from one side of the prison to the other and stuff to get this and get that to be able to provide that person with uh, a valid incident report or with a valid investigation? No, he's not. He's just not. What did he do? They just get it. They come. A lot of them would read their individual rights and say, "Here, the officer wrote you this incident report. Here, sign here that I gave it to you." And he signs it off and he hands it off to the incarcerated person. And no proper investigation is done, right? Because I would tell you, if the proper investigations are done and if lieutenants acted reasonably and responsibly like they're supposed to and doing a proper investigation, a lot of the times a whole lot of incident reports will go to the UDC and or DHO with recommendations from lieutenants who are supposed to do the investigations that there's not enough evidence to suggest that this guy actually did that, or that based on my investigation I don't think that this incarcerated person done this, right? And if it's a minor incident, that lieutenant would probably be trying to resolve that incident report, which is something that you would see later on, come up with a deal, cut a deal with the incarcerated person, make that incident report go away because they might figure there's not enough there, or it's going to be too harsh, or I do think this officer is overreacting and so on and so forth. But that's usually not the case. It's usually either they're too lazy or don't have the time or overburdened to do that job, and or no, to hell with it, we're just gonna roll with the normal mindset and roll with the prison staff and just sign off on whatever they do and let somebody else deal with that, right? These are the things that happen within the system. These are the important things that you need to know about so that you know that this system is tainted, and that helping individuals with this system is seriously needed. And if you don't understand that it can be tainted, when you read some of these incident reports, you're going to say, well, okay, well, yeah, the officer said he did that. He must be guilty. And the lieutenant investigated and didn't do anything, didn't say anything, didn't recommend anything. So that person must be guilty, right? No, it's not right, right? They lie, they cheat, they steal, they can be lazy, they can be overburdened, right? All humans, all human beings, right? You're just doing the wrong things. That's all this is about, right? And so I'm helping you out. All right, so I'm drop to this line here. It says staff conducts an investigation and promptly as possible. That's what the lieutenant is supposed to do. Investigating officer is ordinarily appointed within 24 hours of the incident report. The investigation should be finished within 24 hours of after the appointment, right? So what is this talking about here, right? So we saw earlier that the staff has to write the incident report within 24 hours of the time they became aware, right? So let's use our Monday 12 p.m. Simpson. All right, so I'm a Justice Simpson. I don't call myself slave anymore. I'm not. I don't actually. I still am. I still have the conviction on me. I'm still on probation while recording this. I'm actually still a slave. So Slave Simpson moved food from the chow hall, right? And he was given these two incident reports, right? He's charged with these two codes, one for unauthorized item and one for stealing, right? Let's say the officer said that I did the act at 12 p.m. on Monday. I need to receive that incident report before 12 p.m. on Tuesday, or by 12 p.m. on the Tuesday, the following Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday, the next day, 24 hours. So when that incident happened at 12 p.m. Monday, the staff has to write that incident report in between that time, in between 12 p.m. Monday and 12 p.m. Tuesday. Then once the staff writes that incident report, the investigating officer or the lieutenant has to be assigned that incident report between that same time, 12 p.m. Monday and 12 p.m. Tuesday. The investigating officer has to conduct his investigation, his or her investigation, or their investigation, whichever, between the same time. The investigation has to be over within that same time, and I need to receive that incident report at that time, whether it's you, me, or person incarcerated. That is what is supposed to happen. Fortunately, a lot of times that doesn't happen. They give you the incident report days later, 5 days later. I've seen as far as 2 months later, they give folks incident reports and try to justify that. And staff, the lieutenant, when he gets that, you should automatically, they're supposed to know this system. They're supposed to know it. And so when they see an incident report that is produced, 5, 10, 20 days later, you're supposed to know, hey, I can't do that. I'm not supposed to pass this on. I'm not supposed to go give this to this guy. I'm supposed to throw this in the trash. It's garbage. Do they do that? No. They stick by the staff. Okay, this person wrote you up, 20 days later. He's got something. He must have something against you. You must have done something wrong. You must, I'm gonna roll with my staff and I'm gonna pass this incident report on. And they they go and they sign off. They don't do any investigation. They don't investigate as to why it was late. They just accept it and sign off on it and go deliver it. And now the incarcerated person has to defend this violation of his due process rights. And all the way to the top. It usually goes all the way because that's what they do, right? It's more important to protect staff and to go along with staff's abuse than it is to defend the slaves' due process rights. The slave's due process rights is not as important. Punishing him for what they believe he should not have done is more important than his due process rights, right? But when you are looking at incident reports on behalf of folks who are incarcerated, because they're going to send it to you if they want help with it, you're going to understand and and know that they should not, if the incident report is outside of 24 hours from the time staff determine that the act was committed, it's a violation of due process rights, unless one of the reasons for it being late is there, right? Let me address this next paragraph. It says, when it appears likely that the incident report may involve criminal prosecution, the investigating officer suspends the investigation. Staff may not question the incarcerated person at all until the FBI or the investigating agencies release the incident report for administrative processing. The incident report should then be delivered to the incarcerated person by the end of the next business day. The time frame for processing an incident report is suspended until it is released for processing. All right? So this is probably the only justifiable reason for delivering a late incident report or a late shot or a late write-up, right? And it should only apply to the high severity incidents where staff is suggesting that someone had a weapon, they attacked, they tried to kill someone, maybe sexual harassment or something of a high severity. They probably had a cell phone. Not supposed to have cell phones in prison, right? And that there is, high severity. You shouldn't have that. That stuff goes to the DHO. High sanctions come with that. But they can also be prosecuted in the courts. You could get a new charge for sexual abuse. Sexual abuse. I don't think the prosecutor is going to pick up sexual harassment, but they'll probably charge you for sexual abuse. They'll probably charge you for having a weapon, a knife. If you actually stabbed or hurt someone, you can get a new charge for assault. If you have a cell phone, they could charge you also for having for introducing or having that type of weapons or contraband within the facility. You get a new charge for that. And so if they're going to turn their stuff, these kind of incident reports, over to a prosecutor to do a charge, to try and charge you, then as it says here, they can wait to deliver that incident report, the investigation. So the staff prepares the incident report. So the incident report is written, right? The incident report is written. The lieutenant gets the incident report and discovers that, hey, the prosecutors might take this. Let me recommend this to the prosecutors. The lieutenant then suspends the investigation and the delivery of the incident report. The prosecutors get it, whether they decide to take it or not. If they decide to take it, you don't see an incident report, you're going to get an indictment. Right? If they don't take it, within that 2 weeks time, from the time that the prosecutor says, no, we're not going to do this, within the next 24 hours, the lieutenant is supposed to deliver the written incident report. The written incident, the report that was written within the 24 hours of the time that staff became aware of the incident. That is what's supposed to happen. I would tell you that these folks who work in this prison system violate the rights of those who are incarcerated the majority of the time, because what they will do is not write that initial incident report or write their initial incident report, one out of the two, go to the prosecutors with it. The prosecutors say, we're not going to take this stuff, and as a matter of fact, what is written here is trash. You shouldn't be charging the person with this, or you can't prove this, or whatever. Right? They probably will give back a little bit of feedback. And what would happen is it comes back, and the officers will then try to do what is called a rewrite and start, putting extra stuff in there. And if they didn't write it in the first place, they will now write it with guidance and fabricate a whole lot of stuff in there to support the charge that they are trying to charge. And so now the incarcerated person is getting an incident report a week or 2 weeks later with that was written outside of the 24 hours of the time of the incident, which is a violation of that person's due process rights, which is a violation of this process, and those incident reports should not exist. But staff will write them anyway. They will do this wicked stuff anyway, just for the purpose of trying to make sure that that individual gets punished. Right? It's a punishment mentality. Right? And that's how this system is used against those folks, as punishment, right? And not the proper way. And in lieutenant should not be turning over any incident report that is written outside of 24 hours of the time that the staff figured out that a prohibited act was committed. You should not be recommending it, doing anything with it, right? And that's what they do a lot of the times. And I'm going to train you to look for these things, because these are the things that when it comes to defending, these are the strongest things that you need to know when it comes to defending folks who are incarcerated with the system. All right. Okay. So when the investigation, so we move on. Once the lieutenant gets the incident report and is doing his investigation, and the lieutenant looks at the charges, They're going to come to you, do an investigation. They're going to speak to you. Like I said, they should go back and look for whatever interview any witnesses and stuff that you have first, and then come back and give you the incident report. But that's not what they do. They usually just come to you, read you your rights. They'll document whatever defense you may have and whatever witnesses you say you may have. They'll just document it. They won't go investigate and give a recommendation the majority of the time. And then they would turn over the incident report to you. Right? Of course, they'll read you your rights. You have the right to remain silent at all stages of the disciplinary process. But that your silence may be used to draw an adverse inference against you at any stage of that process. What are they talking about? What do you mean? When you are incarcerated, when you are a slave within the prison system, you do not have the right to remain silent. That is what they're telling you here, right? Because if you remain silent, we're going to punish you for that, right? The mindset or the understanding of those in the justice system or the prison system is when you are a slave in their system or a criminal in their system, you cannot tell the truth, you cannot behave properly or act right. Most of the time, you are guilty. You were found guilty in court already. You committed crimes already, and now you're here, so you can do no good. And our staff only does good and does no wrong. And so, therefore, anytime an incident report is written against you, and we come and question you about it, if you remain silent, 9 times out of 10, you are guilty. You are hiding something because you are a criminal, and that's what you do. That is their mindset. That is their understanding. And so therefore, if you do that, if you remain silent, we are going to most likely find you guilty because you did not defend yourself. The majority of incarcerated folks in prison, when they receive incident reports, they take up this right that they had when they were civilians, when they were human beings, right? And they say, oh, I have a right to remain silent, so I ain't saying nothing. You got to prove I was guilty. And when they do that, they have no clue that things have changed, that they are no longer a civilian or a citizen, and they are now a slave, a non-human being or lesser human being or whatever, and you don't have that right. You are now someone who cannot tell the truth or do any good or any right. So no one is going to believe that you didn't do something or didn't have a part to play in something because you are not telling us about it. You decided to keep silent and not tell us about it. And so therefore, you have no right. Therefore you are guilty, right? That's what's happening here with this statement. And folks don't understand that. But it's important for you who are defending them or helping them to understand that, right? Because a lot of the times they wouldn't say what happened. And in order to help these folks, what we do is, especially at the Remedy Project, you got an incident report? Okay, tell us your side of the story. Tell us from your perspective what happened. That's the first thing we're asking, so that we could defend the person, so that we could present their side of the story, right? If you're going to help folks out, you need to understand this and you need to do that, right? Right? It says, your silence alone, however, cannot be the basis for finding you committed a prohibited act. All right? So what they're saying here is, yeah, we're going to assume you're guilty, right? And we're going to probably find you guilty, but what we need now is something else to put with it to seal the deal. And what are they going to do that with? They're going to use the officer's statement in the incident report and put those two together, your silence and that, and now it's easy. We find you guilty, you're guilty, and that's it. That's all we need, right? Because the officer's statement on the incident report is evidence. It's facts against you. And if you're not challenging those facts, if you're not undermining those facts, and you're remaining silent, you're guilty. That's it, period. I hope you get that. Hope you understand that. It's different out here for you in the community, for them in the prison, for the slaves, for the incarcerated, for the inmates, those folks that are not human. That's what it is. Okay? They don't have a right. They tell you have the right to remain silent, but the truth is they don't. Because if you had the right to remain silent, if they respected that right, they would not be finding you guilty for doing that. So the fact that they use it against you in an adverse way, in an adverse manner, means that you really don't have the right. Okay? I hope you get that. Right? It took me, gotta figure the stuff out. And once you understand this stuff, you know how to argue. You know how to present the person who's seeking help from you. You know how to present their issue, right? And one of the things that needs to change is folks need to defend themselves. They need to tell their side of the story, present their version of what happened. If they don't, they could be innocent as ever, which a lot of them usually are. They're going to end up with incident reports against them and being found guilty and sanctioned because the staff's word and their silence was all that was needed. All that is needed to find them guilty. All right? Statement. When the investigating officer, all of this is important. I'm going through this. Sorry, this video is going to be, such a long thing, but I need you to understand the process, right? And these are things that we use. I'm showing you things that we use here in defending folks during this process, right? Statement. It says here, when the investigating officer asks you for your statement, you may give an explanation of the incident, request any witnesses be interviewed, or request that other evidence be obtained and or reviewed. Yes, you have that right. They acknowledge you have that right. Do they act on those things the majority of the times, especially the investigating officer? No, very little. Very little. A lot of times, especially if an officer is accusing you wrongfully, they actually go back and cover that stuff up if they can. Especially if an officer is the one that's done something wrong, they go back and they cover it up, right? But they're supposed to do this stuff. They acknowledge that. But like I also said to you earlier, lieutenants are usually overburdened. They usually have too much work. They come on their shift. They got to make sure the facility is secure and all types of stuff. They're the immediate supervisors of all the other regular COs or correctional officers. And and they just got a lot of work to do. And incident reports can be burdensome and a lot of work. And so are they going to run back and forth among the prison doing all these investigations and stuff? No. What they do is they collect all the incident reports for a certain time of the day, and then they just go issue these incident reports. Okay, I'm going to go do incident reports now. And all they do is they come, hey, their interview is, I'm reading you your rights. Do you have anything to say? They take witnesses, whatever, they take that stuff, they document that, and then they hand you the incident report, and that's it. And that's it. That's the gist of the investigation, right? As far as they're concerned, the incident report that the staff wrote has everything it needs to do the job. They're usually wrong about that. Right? When they're right about it is when folks don't know how to address these things. All right, and that's what we do. Here's another thing that I want to point out. Statement says, when the investigating officer asks you for a statement, you may give an explanation of the incident. A lot of times, some incarcerated people do that and some don't. I always believe it's best to give an explanation to defend yourself when you're guilty. You don't say anything. You exercise the right that you don't have to remain silent because they're going to find you guilty anyway. You do that. All right. But this statement here is very, very important. I believe, and I would teach and preach, and I did it many times for folks who were incarcerated. I present their statement and or their defense written, a written statement, right? Why? Because when you tell officers stuff, oh, officer, well, this is what really happened. Da, 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 da. That investigating officer, whose buddy or friend, right, they work together, first thing first, but they might hang out together. They go to parties together and do all sorts of stuff. They might be in the gym together, right? So, and you're telling him that his officer did something wrong and is trying to cover it up and is writing you an incident report. Really? And you expect that officer to document what you say accurately and responsibly on your behalf? No, doesn't happen. What do you think? What? No, this is happen. If incarcerated people start writing their defense, writing their side of the stories down and preparing it for putting it forth to give to those who are doing the investigation and to turn over to the other levels, the UDC and the DHO, they would feel better because all what they have to say in defense is on paper and it's on record. It goes on record, and it's hard for folks to say it didn't happen. If they take it out and throw it away, you should have a copy. The incarcerated person should have a copy to say, to turn over at every level, every step of the level that they're going through. So statements are very, very important. All right, so after the investigating officer does that investigation, talks to them, reads them the right, finds out wherever they take that information down, then that person hands you the incident report. He turns it over. And here again, the incident report should be delivered to the incarcerated person within 24 hours of the time that staff became aware of the alleged misconduct, right? So you see, I know this is a lot, and you might think that this is a couple of days that this is supposed to happen, but no, this whole entire process of the incident report being written, investigation, and being delivered all has to happen within 24 hours, right? You see it here, right? And if it doesn't, it's a violation unless they submitted, like I said, to the prosecutors and the prosecutors rejected. But the incident report should have been written within 24 hours. If it's written outside of 24 hours, it's a no-go. It's a violation. All right? If it's delivered outside of 24 hours, it should be because it's a high severity sanction, something that a prosecutor could bring a new indictment on, and the prosecutor decided, oh no, we're not going to do that. Go ahead and give them that incident report that you wrote within the 24 hours of the time that staff became aware. That's what's supposed to happen. And so the investigating officer is now delivering to you, to the incarcerated person, an incident report that was written within 24 hours of the time of the incident, but it's being delivered 2 days late, a week late, 2 weeks late, right? That's it. I hope you get that. That is very, very, very important stuff. It's going to be necessary in defending folks with this process. It's one of the most violated processes. The delivering of those incidents, they violate that so much, is a shame. And all staff just back it up. Or, I mean, I've seen them back that up all the way, ignore the delayed delivery all the way to Washington. All of these folks know that is a violation, and they would back it up. They would ignore it, all to protect staff and or to maintain the mindset of punishment, right? Yeah. Here, I promise you, I have the evidence. So I'm not just talking all of this, right? When you hear me talk and say that these things happen, I promise you, I have the evidence. I use the evidence to train you. So you're going to see these things that I say happen. You're going to see them in real time, real Federal Bureau of Prisons documents showing you these violations. I I got it. And we still get it every day. Well, not every day, but we get it most of the time because we're doing this stuff for folks who are incarcerated, all right? Okay, the rest of this I'm going to skip over. You could take a look uh, at that stuff. It's not as that important as a process and or dealing with what we got going on here, right? Earlier on, I mentioned that a lieutenant who receives an incident report charging a person with, uh, you know, a prohibited act, that after doing the investigation or when doing an investigation, that lieutenant might determine that, hey, you know what, this is not so severe or it's not serious. If it's a severe incident report, he can do nothing about it. If it's not one of the severe incident reports, a 300 series, the lieutenant could say, you know what, I don't, I believe that they're going a little overboard. I think you might have made a mistake here, or you might not have been knowledgeable or aware of what's going on, but you did commit this prohibited act. You know what? This is what I tell you. How about you come and do some extra duty, right? You come out, you go walk around the track or the field, one of the fields, and pick up any trash or paper that might be out there. Or you know what, the lawn needs to be mowed on the field. Why come and do an hour or portion of the lawn for me, and I would make this incident report disappear. That is a tactic called informally resolving the incident report, right? So that officer could do that. The UDC, which comes next, could do that. A DHO could do that, right? If they wanted, they could say, you know what, we'll remove this from your record. We'll resolve this issue with you. Um, you know, and that's one of the tactics that they use. They can also look at it and say, hey, you know what, I don't believe that you did this. I think that this is too much. I don't think you need to go through this process for this, so I'll get rid of this. All right, but be careful or don't do it again or whatever. These things can happen. Lieutenants can informally resolve, UDCs can informally resolve, and DHOs can informally resolve. I also believe that the officer that wrote the incident report can informally resolve, but I wouldn't promote or practice that. I wouldn't promote them doing and practicing that. I've seen it done, but that would be ripe for abuse, right? Because if I wanted an incarcerated person to do something and they weren't being cooperative, or what, you write an incident report and then you go and say, okay, you're going to do this, or this, I'm going to leave this incident report on you, right? And now you're forcing folks to do things that you don't want them to do. Uh, I'm sure this happens. I haven't seen it a lot, but I believe I can recall an incident or two where something like this has happened. But it is not common, and it shouldn't be practiced. Usually the lieutenants and so are the ones who informally resolve, or the UDC informally resolves. And I think that that's better, because the other way around is ripe for abuse. All right? So you could read that, but that's what informally resolving it is on. Mentally ill, incarcerated folks, this here governs how the disciplinary process should be dealt with them. I would say to you that a lot of mentally ill, incarcerated folks are not reaching out, asking for help with this process. And so you usually don't have this part here to deal with, but at least you know that there is a part of the process that addresses how to deal with mentally ill folks during the disciplinary process. You know where it's there, you know where it's at, and then you could get to it. All right. UDC, Unit Disciplinary Committee, right? This is chapter 541.7. This is very important. Okay, I gotta break this down to you, right? Because incarcerated persons don't even understand this fully or understand what to expect. So I got to break this down for you. All right, Unit Disciplinary Committee, review of the incident report. So what they do, if it's a 300 series incident report, and again, we're going to look at that stuff later on, but just pay attention to me mentioning it now. This is a moderate or low level incident type of report. The UDC or Unit Disciplinary Committee, when addressing those, they are the prosecutor and the judge at the same time. It's usually done by two or more staff, and that staff who is tasked with doing this job of the UDC, it's usually the incarcerated person's unit team or unit team members throughout the prison, right? But first and foremost, the incarcerated person's unit team. Who is the unit team? What am I talking about? Well, if you looked at the handbook teaching, I explained that that unit team is consists of a unit manager, a case manager, and a unit counselor. Well, it consists of a secretary also. Again, I don't usually see secretaries getting involved in this stuff, right? It's not been my experience from the vast amount of you know transfers and prisons that I've been in and cases that I've worked on. You're not seeing that. UDC hearings are usually done by those three officers: unit manager, case manager, unit counselor. They're the ones that do the unit team. They're the unit team, the official unit team members, or the primary unit team members, and they are also the UDC. They are the ones who do deal with this situation, and again, they're usually they're prosecutors and judges at the same time. And again, that's for the low level offenses, the 300 series offenses. If it's a 200 series or 100 series offense, a higher offense level, the UDC becomes a stepping stone in the process. They are almost like redoing what the investigating officer was supposed to do. They're just preparing you for the DHO hearing or going to the DHO, who is a disciplinary officer, who is like the judge slash prosecutor at the higher level, right? So they are the lower level prosecutor and judge, and then there's a higher level one who's called the DHO, right? So we can look at it like that. And so that's who these guys are, right? The unit team is the UDC, and they review the incident. And so after the lieutenant gives you that incident report, he turns it over to the UDC, and the UDC has to deal with this situation or start moving along with your process. And they have to get it done within 5 business days. You're going to see that in here, right? They're going to conduct what is called a UDC hearing within 5 business days of the time that the incident report was delivered to you. So let's say the incident report was given to me on Tuesday at 12 p.m., right? At the end of the 24 hours, or right on the mark, right? The UDC hearing, which should be conducted within 5 business days, needs to happen by the Monday of the following week, 12 p.m. And it must have 2 of these staff members to do it. They can do it with 1 if it's a referral to the DHO, right? If they're just referring, if it's a high severe shot, a 200 series or 100 series, they cannot address this shot. They are just going to prepare you for the DHO hearing, which is them conducting, reading you your rights, and stuff, right? As you can see here in number 3, incident report will refer to disciplinary officer, right? Right, so it's about them reading you your rights and taking, asking you for your witnesses again and that stuff. and providing the DHO with all the information that he needs, especially from the investigating officer, making sure the DHO gets everything. However, if it's a 300 series incident, the UDC can address the issue by conducting a UDC hearing, which is going to be like your little court hearing again, by which they will play prosecutor and judge at the same time and determine whether you did this prohibited act or not and find you guilty. I would tell you the majority of the time, because the incarcerated person may choose to remain silent, and with the incident report from the staff member, they're going to find you guilty because you are guilty, right? Because you cannot be innocent and remain silent when you're a slave in the justice system. It just doesn't happen, right? It doesn't make any sense, right? And a lot of times they're protecting staff or going along with the punishment mindset. This is something real, all right? Or they're protecting and helping staff cover up something. An incarcerated person might be about to expose something or seeing an officer do something. And the officer says, I'm going to get you first. And the officer turns around and writes an incident report in retaliation. And staff, the UDC, the investigating officer, allows it to go, and the UDC will get it, and they're supposed to address it, and they will allow it to go. They would act like you are guilty, or what you're saying that this officer is taking advantage of you is not true, and that the officer, they love to write that the officer is more credible than you, that the human being, the other human being who has something to lose might get demoted or might lose couple days violation or something if they're exposed. You know, that human being that has a right and a will and a want to lie, a lot of times, no, because they're Bureau of Prison staff, they are more credible than you, and so therefore we're going to find you guilty. You know, because that person can't lie because they got on a badge that or and a uniform that says that they work for the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Right? Or for any prison. This doesn't just happen in the Federal Bureau of Prisons. I know that, and I believe with all my heart that it happens in the state prisons, right? Because we are all human beings, right? Who do you think are the folks who work in these to these capacities in the Federal Bureau of Prisons or in the prison system that do this stuff? Right? What are they plucking these folks from Mars or something? These human beings, are they coming from a different world that they are not going to lie, steal, and cheat when it benefits them? From the same planet, right? We're all human beings. That's what they do. But they say, oh no, they're more credible because they're working there. Good luck with that nonsense. All right? And so folks suffer. Let me give you a rundown. What's supposed to happen here is, or let me continue the rundown, I should say. So after they get the incident report and the information from the lieutenant, they then conduct a hearing within 5 days. And in that hearing, they're going to read your rights. They're going to ask you for your statement, right? Which you should be providing a written statement. I believe in that. If you're going to defend yourself, if you're not going to remain silent and you're going to defend yourself, you should provide them with a written statement for the record. Period. We teach that. We train students to do that on behalf of them. Here at the Remedy Project is something that I personally developed and I've done over the years. I've never seen anyone else who does this type of work, helping folks out with administrative remedies and or addressing incident reports, incarcerated or not, provide statement of defenses for individuals. I have done it. It has worked well. When you do that and you provide it and they put it in the system and staff ignore it. If I provide a statement of defense saying, yes, that Jim and John were with me and they're my witnesses and they saw that I didn't have any food on me, and this officer is lying on me, and staff now, to cover up the fact that this officer is lying on me, they wanted to ignore my witnesses, deny me my witnesses, and they put it in the saying, oh, inmate Simpson didn't have any witnesses, he didn't request any witnesses, and they'll do that at the UDC level, and they'll do that and the DHO would do that. Oh, you didn't have any witnesses, but if it's on the record, you provided that you provided a statement. It's showing on the record that you provided a written statement, and then they go look at the written statement, and it clearly says in that written statement that you want two witnesses. You got them, right? These are the type of tactics and things that I developed and had to develop, was forced to develop and create in order to challenge the abuse of this process and this system by staff. And so providing a written statement of defense is good. And so what you do is we just have the incarcerated person tell us their side of what's happening, and then we we tell that, and then we explain how this rule or whatever wasn't violated, or how this person is actually innocent, and we request that these folks not be found guilty of this stuff, right? To the UDC and or to the DHO, you address the issue, right? Depending on which one is going to, right? So the UDC, when they look at this incident, if they're playing judge and prosecutor, they're going to look at all the stuff. If you have witness, sometimes they do call your witnesses and talk to them. A lot of times that doesn't help. If they want to find you guilty, they're going to find you guilty anyway. They're going to just say your witnesses are slaves too, so they're not credible. And then sometimes, they'll say, okay, you know what? All right, you guys, all right. I think it's not enough here to get you. I think, yes, the officers might be taking a little bit of advantage of you here, and they might dismiss the incident report, or they could resolve it. And if not, they're going to be harsh. They're going to find you guilty, and and that's it. And if it's to be referred to the DHO, it's then referred to the DHO. It goes up to the DHO with all the evidence collected by the UDC, and then it goes to the DHO, and the DHO addresses it. Right? See all the things that I've covered, a lot of stuff, right? It's here, see it here. UDC members ordinarily consist of 2 or more. I talked about that. Timing, UDC will ordinarily review the incident report 5 work days after issued, right? After it was given to the incarcerated person. Okay, this is the only reason it could be suspended, just like the incident report. It's the same thing, right? You have the right to appear at your UDC hearings and your DHO hearings. This, for some reason, they don't usually violate this one. They usually do UDC hearings, with the incarcerated person. The incarcerated person in special housing unit, the SHU, consolidated confinement, if they're torturing him, the UDC staff would usually go to the SHU and do the hearing, right? That's where most hearings are conducted, is in the special housing unit. So in other words, here's another thing. If you're given an incident report, and a lot of times if it's severe, they'll place you in the torture chamber to be tortured until the DHO shows up so you can see him. So that's where the DHO usually conducts his hearing, in the torture chamber. I've seen some facilities where the DHO did it differently, but a lot of places you have to go into the torture chamber to see the DHO. And guess what? Just going to see the DHO in the torture chamber was horrible for me personally. Why? Because I had to be dehumanized. Every time you go into the special housing unit, into the SHU, they strip you butt naked and peek up your butt to see what you carry. Oh my God, it's horrible. I can't stand it. Why are you violent? I'm a spiritual guy. I'm not supposed to be, showing my nakedness, to everyone, anyone. But it's nothing I could do. Once you're in that system, you're a slave to the system. You are no longer human, and we're going to treat you however we want to treat you. And we don't care whether you are the type of person that would carry something illegal in your butt or not. We're going to just violate you because we can. That is the understanding. And so when they conduct DHO hearings in the SHU, man, it's a horrible thing to have to go through. All right. at some places at Beaumont Low where I was, sometimes the DHO would conduct it outside, um, in an office next to the warden's office, which was pretty decent. And in other places, you have to go to the torture chamber to do your hearing. All right. Let me move on from that. So appearance is not that big of a deal. They usually don't violate that. Evidence, very, very important. I covered that a little bit a while ago, and I'm going to cover it again. Evidence is extremely important to defending your incarcerated individual that's seeking your help. They don't know that a lot of times. Sometimes they get it because they've been through a court and a trial, and they know that they have to provide some evidence, and they could tell you where the evidence is at. And if it's not too late, you provide a statement of defense. You see it's titled here, evidence. You are entitled to make a statement and present documentary evidence to the UDC on your own behalf, right? A statement of defense is both your statement and documentary evidence, because your statement is also evidence. Boom. Right? That's actually, you create that, right? You create a statement of defense, documentary evidence. You write the incarcerated person's defense down, and you provide it to the UDC, and they would pass it on to the DHO if that's where that goes. All right. It's a no-brainer. Let's just do it. if we can, right? Sometimes the stuff gets to us too late. The UDC might have already decided that the person is guilty or whatever, and there's a wait for the DHO. And so what you do is, you go ahead and provide the statement of defense for the DHO. All right. If it's a DHO case, you had a longer span of time because DHOs usually don't see folks immediately. That's rare, unless the folk got the incident report last week and the DHO was assigned to come this week. So then that's a quick turnover for that individual. But for the majority of others, they probably had to wait a month. It should be 15 days, but about a month or so they have to wait just to get their hearing, right? So the UDC and or DHO will consider all the evidence presented during this review, which they must consider your written statement of defense, right? You must provide that. They're supposed to consider, if you say that the stuff is recorded on the cameras, the camera saw it, they should consider that. They should be trying to review it, all right? Of course, if you're saying you have witnesses, they should be interviewing your witnesses. So your witness statements is evidence, right? All of those fall under evidence, right? The UDC decision will be based on at least, I had to stop there. I got to show you this. All right, so they're supposed to consider all of this. All right, let me read this apart here. This is exciting. I love this part. Say the UDC decision will be based on at least some facts, and if there are conflicting evidence, on the greater weight of the evidence. Just want you to know, right, that the UDC's decision, right, this judge and prosecutor, which is a unit team that is dealing with this incarcerated person, can find them guilty based on some facts. They don't have to have all the facts. It doesn't have to be outstanding or overwhelming evidence that you are guilty. They just need some facts. Just a little bit, right? When you are a slave, and I'm having too much fun. I'm bad. I'm not laughing at myself that I got myself put in that stupid system. It's crazy. But when you were a slave in the prison system, you're not entitled to have overwhelming evidence presented against you. No, because you are no longer a full human being, someone that could be immune and dehumanized at any point in time that they feel like. Yeah, you're only entitled to a little bit of facts, just some facts, right? And some facts. What is some facts? Whatever the officer wrote in the incident report, right? So if the officer wrote that David Simpson was exiting the chow hall at 12 p.m. With food in his possession, and he's not supposed to have, that's it. That's the some facts. Where is the actual food? Did you collect the items and kept them and turn them in over as evidence and stuff? No, you threw them in the trash. Well, don't worry. Don't worry. The fact that you didn't collect and preserve all the evidence doesn't matter. You're just because you say, because you, the credible officer, says, that's enough. That's some facts to find Simpson guilty, right? And and if Simpson, you know, is stupid enough to remain silent, oh, we don't need anything else. It's good, right? A lot of incarcerated people, we go down all the time for that, right? Um, yeah, some facts, right? And if there's conflicting evidence, the greater weight of the evidence. Well, in other words, if the staff member says, they saw me coming out the chow hall with food, and I say, well, there was no food taken from me, and that there is no food presented, there's no pictures of food, or you or the lieutenant or you, the UDC has no food in their possession which was taken from me, and I have two incarcerated folks who say that no food was taken from me and that this officer is actually lying on me, all right, you would think that all the stuff that I have said there just now is more than enough evidence to be of greater weight, right? So my evidence is heavier than the staff report of, oh, well, I, found Simpson coming up with stuff and I took it, right? The weight here is that statement and the fact that the officer is more credible. That's what they're relying on. And I'm saying my weight over here is, well, I have two other slaves that were with me that says that that didn't happen, and I'm saying that it didn't happen at all, right? So I have my statement, which is evidence. I have my witnesses, which is also some weight to it that I have witnesses. I have their statements, which they will provide, which is also evidence. Um, you know, and then what if I throw, well, there's probably a camera. Go check the camera. All of that, you would think tips the scale. It should, right? It kind of sounds like, he must be more credible. In the prison system now. In the prison system now. You need the camera. If they go on the camera and they see, oh, they pat search and the person didn't remove any food off of me, that is the only way I'm probably getting beaten that report. Otherwise, they most likely finding me guilty. This greater weight of the evidence stuff is nonsense. They don't go by that. They don't go by that. Right? And on top of that, if they found out like a guy like me was lied upon by an officer and the cameras show that I was correct and the officer was lying, oh, what does this turn into now then? It doesn't turn into me not being guilty and the officer violating my rights. What it turns into is, oh, we need to protect this officer from Slave Simpson because he could now turn around and provide a write-up against the officer for violating my rights, which is clear that this video will show, and this officer would be now be able to be sanctioned, disciplined. If too many of those prohibits promotions and or pay raises to a certain extent. Oh no, that's our friend, that's our buddy. We can't allow that to happen. Let's protect them. Right? That's where it goes next. This stuff. Again, it's not that this stuff is not bad. It's if they follow it. Right? It's about them following these things, following these, I tell you. Sanctions. If you committed a prohibit act, the UDC can, so any 300 series incident report, the UDC can do their job and prosecute and judge you and find you guilty right? Again, if it's it's a 200 series or 100 series, it has to go to a DHO. The UDC is just now a referral committee. They're just doing paperwork to pass it on. They're just a stepping stone in the process, and they do what they need to do to pass that on, right? When the UDC conducts their hearing after they find you guilty, or if they're just passing it on, they're supposed to provide you a written report of what they recommend to the DHO if it's a referral. All right, so we recommend that this person be guilty, or we could recommend that this person be not be found guilty, or we might not have a recommendation. It's up to them. Right? They get to do that. And if they're addressing the issue, if it's a 300 series or whatever, the written report, the incident written report, is supposed to contain, why they found you guilty, what evidence they relied on, and so on and so forth, right? All of that stuff you'll see in here, but you will get this stuff a lot better and a lot easier when dealing with it on the actual incident report, which there's a section for the UDC to fill out on the incident report, which is for the UDC hearing. So you get training on all of that stuff. Appeals. This is where it kicks into the administrative remedy process. This is why we're doing this and we're covering this. This is why we assist and train students and everyone else to help folks who are incarcerated with this, because in order, once you're given that incident report and you're found guilty by the UDC or the DHO, now in order to appeal, in order to prove yourself innocent, in order to get these sanctions off of you, the incarcerated person now needs to use the administrative remedy process. And if it's a UDC at the prison level, the UDC found him guilty and sanctioned, and he wants to appeal, it must be done using the BP9, the blue form BP9. That's how you appeal to the warden. You use that process, right? And then after, if the warden denies, it then goes to the region using the BP10. If the region denies and fails to overturn, it then goes to the central office using the BP11. Right? Then your situation is exhausted. Right? And from the 9 to the 11 will 9 times out of 10, whatever violation you're challenging and or sanctions you're trying to get back, probably most of the time you're not losing good time in that, because UDC can't take away good time from you. Only the DHO can. 9 times out of 10, that case is not going to be worthy of the courts. Even though you exhausted it all the way to the 11, that situation is not going to be worthy of the courts, so you can't move into the courts next. However, when appealing the DHO report and the DHO sanctions, you'd start at the 10, not the 9. You start at the regional level. You appeal the DHO report at the regional level using the BP10, the yellow form. And then if the region denies you, you go to the 11, which is the pink form, right, at the central office level. And if they deny you, you have exhausted and you can go into the courts appealing because you've lost good conduct time and stuff like that, depending on what the sanction is. Most likely you can, because it's a high severity sanction. If the DHO dealt with a 300 series and found you guilty of a 300 series incident report, depending on what it is, you might not be able to go into the courts. All right. Chapter 5, disciplinary hearing officer. Okay, I got to cover this again. This is something that I know it's long. Hopefully we break this up into sections for you. But it's all important. It's all necessary. DHO hearing. The DHO officer again conducts a DHO hearing. So after the UDC prepares you, the unit team prepares you for this hearing to see the DHO comes to the prison and they bring you to see the DHO. He conducts a hearing or your trial. Right? So he conducts your trial. He or she, whoever the DHO is your prosecutor and your judge. Okay? they play both roles. And so that officer is supposed to read you your rights, look at the facts and so on, call witnesses and all these things. This is what you're going to see here at the hearing. The DHO, if you have witnesses, you can call the witnesses. He could talk to you first. You could call witnesses first, after reading your rights and all of that stuff. DHO is supposed to talk to you and find out what is your defense. All right. And a good DHO, a proper DHO, is supposed to make an impartial determination on whether you're guilty or not. My problem is, how is that even possible if the DHO is your prosecutor and your judge? How is it possible that he is prosecuting you and being an impartial person at the same time? How is that possible? Right? He's arguing or looking at your case or your situation based on behalf of the officer who wrote the incident and all the other stuff that's there. Right? So this is one thing I love. They say to us all the time, my officers or our officers don't do any wrong. They're not the ones. It's you. You're the one who misbehave. You're the one who is incarcerated for committing crimes, right? Not my officers. They don't do any wrong. So you're most likely guilty. Right? That's prosecutorial behavior. Right? That's what they do. Right? That's siding with the officials. Right? And it happens often. I have seen DHOs now, don't get me wrong, I've seen some DHOs do the right thing. I've seen some DHOs, when you lay out a defense properly, when you challenge your stuff and you present your facts and your evidence in your statement, right? I have seen DHOs who will do the right thing throughout an incident report. And then I've seen DHOs who live to rubber stamp incident reports against incarcerated folks. They don't care what it is, whether you're innocent or not. No, you gotta be guilty because staff don't lie. Staff don't write incident reports against folks who don't deserve it, right? I can even give you a name. I was Beaumont Low. His name was Lacey. Challenge Lacey so much, on behalf of so many people. It's a shame. She rubber stamped everything. Okay. Available dispositions. So DHO makes a determination on, of course, put you through the process, give you the hearing, decide whether you're guilty or not. All right. And then what happens is the DHO, when he finds, a lot of times they will tell you right then and there after the hearing whether they think you're guilty or not and what they're going to sanction you to, and they will make note of that. But then they will leave and they have 15 days to prepare that report properly, explain why they're going to find you guilty and so on and so forth after making their notes, and they're going to put it on a form which is called a DHO report, and they're supposed to turn that DHO report over to you within 15 days of having that hearing. Right? And so that's the process, right, with that. And I explain now, when you get that DHO report, you can appeal it at the regional office level and then the central office, and then take it into the courts, especially if you lose good conduct time. So this timing here, you will receive written notice of the charges against you at least 24 hours before a DHO hearing. So it is possible that a DHO is coming to a facility to do DHO hearings on Tuesday, and I committed a prohibited act or was accused of a prohibited act on Monday at 12 p.m. I received an incident report by Tuesday 12 p.m. and I would have to receive a UDC hearing by, let's say, 2 p.m. on that Tuesday, and then I could see a DHO that same Tuesday at 4 p.m. What I just said there is legitimate. Anything else is not. You can't give me an incident report and make me see the UDC and DHO all before Tuesday, 12 p.m. If the act that I was accused of was on 12 on Monday, 12 p.m. on Monday, you can't do the entire process within the 24 hours. That's what this is basically saying here, right? Of course, it talks about appearing. It's not that, we talked about that. They'll make you appear in front of the DHO or over by camera is appropriate. They'll do that. They'll make you appear to your hearing. I usually don't find incident reports challenging issues because of lack of appearance. But if there is one, you know where to find it. You know to go to the program statement and look at that. This here, staff representative. This covers a staff representative during the DHO hearing process as follows. I would say don't waste your time with this. Most incarcerated folks are not looking out for staff to help them with anything pertaining to an incident report that goes in front of a DHO, because history and time has proven that this is an absolute waste of time and the worst thing that you could do, because all the staff are going to work together towards burying you. It's just that simple and that common. Am I saying that no staff will do the right thing on behalf of an incarcerated person and help them out? No, I'm not saying that. I actually, in my training, have an incident where one staff stepped up on behalf of an incarcerated person when another staff member totally abused their situation and wrote an incident report and violated that person's rights in so many ways, right? So I'm not saying it's impossible. What I'm saying is it's not common. It's not likely. And so therefore, incarcerated folks using staff representatives, it's probably not going to happen. If you're incarcerated for, let's say, 5 months or more, you understand that the majority of staff are not your friends. They're not there to be your friends. They're not there to help you out. They're just there to do a job, and that job is to make sure that the business of incarcerating people is running well and secured, and that you be punished. And that's what they're going to do all the time. They don't fail at that, right? And so incarcerated folks do not trust staff members to be proper representatives on their behalf, so no one uses this process, and they shouldn't, right? Because I picked one of the most trustworthy men that I've met in the Federal Bureau of Prisons while I was at Beaumont Low, and the staff was, they were doing me dirty. One officer groped me on a pat search, and I challenged, and I reported that. And while I was reporting it, the officer went and retaliated and did exactly what the purpose of the scope says not to do, and produced a incident report in a retaliatory manner, and they prosecuted me heavily on that incident report, and I fought that all the way. When I told you I fought it all the way, but staff at every level was fighting me, and I decided and determined that if I had any chance was for me to get one of the most reputable prison officers that I've ever seen to stand up on my behalf and be there to witness the violations and help me out. Oh, and that was DHO Lacey. DHO Lacey, when I showed up to that DHO hearing and I told her that I wanted Moten to be she was like, oh no, you can't do that. You can't have him. What are you talking about? What? You want one of the coolest, nicest guys on the compound to come and be? Oh no, pick somebody else. He's not available. I said, no. I stuck with it. I said, no, he is available. You're supposed to provide me with staff representative of my choice, and and hold a DHO hearing in time schedule. You could cancel this one and schedule for the next time and have Moten appear. So she knew what I was talking about and canceled that DHO hearing. And I had another one, and then the other one, I think he didn't show up, and they canceled it again. And the third time, based on insistence, Moten showed up. And I thought that I was doing the good thing because they were trying to convince me to choose somebody else or not have him. And I stuck to my guns that I wanted this guy. And, you know, this guy showed up. This guy and I, we had a good relationship. He was responsible for the the law library and the library, and we had a good relationship. And this guy, and I thought that he came to this hearing, and I thought that he would listen. I thought he would even just listen to my defense. Right? I didn't expect him to defend me because I could defend myself. Right? I just felt like if he was there representing me and he heard my defense, he would be able to say to this outrageous DHO, hey, you know what? What he's saying makes sense. He's probably right. Is he right or is he wrong? And stand up for me. That didn't happen. This guy, one of the best officers, came to my hearing and did this. And he stood there and listened to this DHO violate my rights after I presented my defense, ignored my defense, avoided bringing up the fact that I'm saying that my defense was I'm being retaliated against with this report because I reported this sexual abuse when the officer groped me during a pat search, and she didn't care. They defended this officer, and one of the greatest officers, the nicest guys on the compound, stuck his head in the sand and allowed them to violate me. He did nothing about it. And from that moment on, even I never recommended a staff representative because it makes no sense. Unless this staff member knows you from the community or is family somehow or something, that person is not going to go against the wolf pack on your behalf. They're just not going to do it. Who are you? Who are you to make me go against my entire organization for you? No, I'm not doing it. Right? And so most folks who choose staff representatives get screwed over. And so we don't use them anymore, or I didn't recommend them, and folks didn't do it. All right. Yeah. So staff representative, you can forget about that part. It's usually a waste of time. But if it does come up, it's there. You know where to find it. Appearance, again, I addressed that at the UDC hearing and the DHO. They usually make sure you appear, whether by video or in person, and so on and so forth. They make sure you appear. If an appearance issue comes up, you know where to find the information here in this report. Evidence and witness is the same thing. Like I covered for the UDC hearing, it's the same thing here. Providing a statement of defense, written, it's the best defense you could possibly provide. On that, saying who your witnesses and stuff are, and whether you think a camera caught it or whatever, you hand it over written. You are doing yourself the best thing possible. And or if you are like us, the Remedy Project, doing work on behalf of folks incarcerated, doing that is the best thing. Providing a written statement of defense, if you can, that is the best thing. When it comes time to defending or appealing the DHO hearing and the DHO report, you now need to, as someone helping those with that, you need to now ask the person about the hearing. What happened at your DHO hearing? Give me your side of the story. What happened? When you went to the DHO, what happened? Did the DHO read your rights? Did he do this? Did he afford you your witnesses? Did he talk about your evidence? Why did he say that he was finding you guilty? What did he sanction you to? What did he tell you he was going to sanction you to? Who else was there? Whatever. Did your witness come? What did your witness say? Right? In order to appeal a DHO hearing, you need to have the witness, the evidence. You need to know what happened at that hearing. evidence and witness here, so you need all that information. But like I said, as far as what is on the screen here, we covered this. It's the same as the DUDC hearing. I'm not going to go through it. You could read it at least twice minimum, because you're going to do some hearings on behalf of folks, right? You could look at that. I'm not going to go through it. But when it comes to appealing that stuff, you need to know what happened at the hearing. So when doing an appeal, you mention what happened before, but you're appealing the hearing and the violations of the DHO at the hearing. And if the DHO did not look at stuff, didn't look at your witnesses, didn't call your witnesses, didn't pay attention to your defense, or whatever, that's what you're appealing. You have to explain why the DHO is wrong, and you do that on appeal with the 10 to the region. You must attach the DHO report, because you're going to be challenging the DHO report. You can't start an appeal for a DHO hearing without the DHO report. You can't start an appeal at the warden's level for a UDC hearing without the UDC report, and so on and so forth. The sanctions, again, I don't think a significant that I need to spend time going over with it with you. Sometimes a person can be over sanctioned, but a lot of times they're going to be looking for you to overturn the conviction. And so after addressing that part, you could then go look at the sanctions that belong to the prohibited acts and see if you could make an argument for that after the fact. All right. Written report, this is what I was just talking about. The DHO has to provide this. The UDC provides one. The DHO have to provide one. And only when you get that report, only then you can start the appeal process, which I explained. You could read the stuff. I covered the majority of what's needed there. You don't need to go through that. And I'm going to teach you personally how to do this stuff also. So yeah, right? Appeals, same thing. I covered this, right? You appeal. This reviewing official, warden, regional director, general, may approve, modify, reverse, or send back. Wardens rarely do that. I've tried to get wardens to do it. I don't think a warden knows and understands that they can take on a DHO appeal and assist with it. I don't think they know that. So I usually just don't go to them. What I will do is I'll write up the situation as a complaint and send it to the warden that way, and see if they'll address it. But they usually don't. They usually tell you go through the remedy process, and they'll point you to the region, right? Which is the region is the primary one to do it, all right? To get stuff overturned. And again, I'll teach you on how to do that. So I'm not going to cover it here. So appealing DHO, so you appeal UDC at the warden, you appeal DHO at the region, and then you appeal them all at each higher level as they go along according to the remedy process. The administrative remedy process, which you have been trained in. Okay, this is a summary of the system. Let's see if it's accurate. Staff becomes aware of the incarcerated person involvement in an incident, or once the report is released for administrative processing, follow a referral for a criminal prosecution. Okay, so either you get the incident report or it goes to the courts, right? Ordinarily maximum of 24 hours. What do they mean here? They don't say anything here. Well, what this means is that incident report and all the processing of it has to be done within 24 hours. Now, outside, you see here, they kind of like presenting it outside of the 24 hours. Staff gives the incarcerated person notice of the charges by delivering the incident report, and they give it outside the 24 hours. No, it has to be inside the 24 hours, unless it's going to prosecution. Then it can be about 2 weeks, right? But if it's not going to prosecution, it must be within 24 hours, as I showed you. Maximum ordinary 5 working days. This is for the UDC hearing, right? The UDC hearing must happen within 5 working days. Initial review, UDC, maximum 24 hours unless waived, right? You can't have a DHO hearing within 24 hours. It has to be after. Obviously, this is not trying, they're not trying to say that this is a 24-hour system here. If you can't do a DHO hearing within 24 hours, where you find a guy guilty, the UDC shouldn't be able to find him guilty within the 24 hours also. That would be a violation. I would say UDC hearing has to happen outside of the 24 hours to be fair, just like the DHO. So this is not an accurate depiction of what that should look like. That is trash. Time limits are subject to this. Okay, I'm gonna skip that. Rights of the incarcerated individual, of the slaves. Your rights and responsibilities are covered here again. All right, you have 11 of them. I think we covered that. I don't need to do that again. All right, but you just need to know where it's at. It's listed here and it's listed in the handbook. Okay, so now we're going to come down to that table, prohibited acts and available sanctions, greatest severity level of prohibited acts. Boom. This is what I was talking about. If it's severe, if it's a 100, we call this, see this 100 here? In the prison system, we call it 100 series. It's a 100 series shot, or a 100 series incident report, or a 100 series write-up, right? And 100, number 100 is killing. Anyone who kills anyone in prison, this is what you get. Assaulting any person, doesn't matter who, you assault someone, escape from escort, setting a fire, right? These top charges here, as I started off, I'm not going to read them all. You could go through them. All can be prosecuted by a prosecutor. And so, starting a fire, arson, you're trying to burn down the prison system. That's going to be a serious charge, right? You had 2 weeks. They had 2 weeks for that. But the incident report should have been written already within the 24 hours, right? It's just 2 weeks to deliver. All right, you got to remember that it's extremely important, because staff abuse this process. They give folks stuff that is written outside of 24 hours all the time, after they work things out and plan and plot and plan and maneuver and hide evidence and stuff. Then they come and they give the incident report. It's ridiculous, right? But this is the 100 series. Take a look at all the sanctions that can come here. Or it's not even that important to go over this. I would say that it's important that when an incarcerated person reaches out to you about an incident report, and you look at the charges, that's when it's important for you to come here and look at everything that it says in that charge. Like 199, conduct which disrupts and or interferes with the security or orderly running of the institution or bureau. You want to read it all right, and to make sure that it's an appropriate sanction, and that the facts and the sanction are lining up. All right, and then it talks about the sanctions that could be given. They could take away your job, they could take away privileges and stuff like that. Right, high severity level prohibited acts. This is 200 series. This is again, so 100 series and 200 series all go to the DHO. They cannot be informally resolved. A lieutenant cannot stop the process. A UDC cannot stop the process. It must go to the DHO. A DHO can informally resolve and or stop the process of these. So the UDC is a stepping stone when any of these prohibited acts are written up against an incarcerated person. So I'm going to breeze by these again. I'm not going to read them all for you. Right, but you know where they're at. It's important you know where to find them. This is the section, not the first section, but this section here is what's more important to you, right? So now we're into the 300 series section, right? Moderate severe level, 300 series incident reports. These are written most of the time. UDC and or unit team can address these. They can informally resolve these. A lieutenant can informally resolve them, or they can give the hearing on it and find the person guilty. These can also go to DHOs. They usually go to DHOs if a person has too many of them in a short space of time, or they have 100 or 200 series incident along with one of these. And then the DHO will deal with everything of the prohibited act, right? So these are lesser acts and that UDC usually covers. And then there's 400 series. I'm gonna skip forward real close just to show you if there's 400 series acts that are hardly and rarely ever used and never challenged an incident report for those. Then you have available sanctions, um, you know, that you could go through that the UDC and or the DHO can apply. And that brings us to the end of this disciplinary report. I am sure that this was too long. I apologize, but it is necessary in order to assist folks with this stuff. No one is doing this for them in there. They're under complete strain, not just from incarcerated folks, but from also staff. They're not getting proper medical care. They got issues going on with family members on the outside. All types of things are happening to them. And on top of that, a lot of them are going to reach out to you because they're being abused by staff through this process and they want to challenge it and get some relief. And so they're going to reach out to you for that to assist them with it. And you are going to have the whereabouts to look at both what they're saying happened and staff is saying happened and kind of determine whether you'll be able to kind of like determine whether they're guilty or not, but that is not the purpose of you doing that. The purpose of you doing that is for you to help them present the best defense on their behalf through this process. All right, so thanks again for joining us here at the Remedy Project Criminal Justice Realm. David Simpson